Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. It is still January 14th, 2026. And this is Committee on General and Housing. We are this afternoon going to introduce a number of bills. And the first of them is going to be introduced by our partner in crime, Representative Michael Marcotte, who is the chair of the House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. Michael?
Chair. Asking. So for the record, I'm Michael Marcotte, College. I was talking with the Department of Labor, the different things that they were looking at to come forward. That was decent, but we joined up here. Take care of the labor end of UI, but I was, when I saw the language, I was really surprised that we didn't have language in the statute that made sure that people that were elected, that UI wasn't available to them, but apparently it's not in there, so I think all of us as elected officials, we don't have the availability of unemployment insurance. Sure that everybody that's elected that chooses to in this realm, UI is not available to them, the town clerk. So that's what the bill is supposed to do. Discussing the LCT, I think there's language that needs to be tweaked in there, but that's basically what it was.
When, if and when, I would say probably more likely, when we pull this off the wall, we'll ask for testimony from them and deal with it. Okay. Any questions?
I have a question.
Please proceed.
This might be a silly question. What if, like, a town clerk is appointed? Is it specifically the election mechanism? So an appointed town clerk? Okay,
At that point, you become, you're hired. There's that employer-employee dynamic for UI. But, when you don't have that dynamic when you're elected. Every 2 years, you're going to re-up. And so if your constituents decide that they want somebody else in the position, then should you be afforded UI? I think so.
and for those of the committee who don't know what UI is, could you really quickly explain that?
Sure. So our unemployment insurance. It's this program will make sure that people that lose their job through no fault of their own have backup to partial wage replacement until they can find another job. Municipalities are generally reimbursable employers, which means that they don't pay into the system. But if they have employees that lose their job again through no fault of their own and they're given unemployment, that they pay dollar for dollar.
They pay into the system.
Right. It's generally a quarter behind, so.
So just,
Yeah,
when you
go
say
on.
it's a quarter behind, meaning you would have to wait.
Well, so
Accumulate.
you'll be billed. So they'll be paid in one quarter, the next quarter, you're gonna get the bill for that.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
It was fun to work.
I think,
You can stay and hang out if you want.
For 1 year, my committee was in here, my second year I was here.
Uh-huh.
1 year.
And that was enough.
No, it had to do with the chair had an operation and it didn't go well. It was on crutches. Easier for this room, a little bigger.
Now you have all that beautiful natural lighting.
This is true. We also have a lot of heat that comes in.
Oh.
And it's not just from people coming in. Thank you.
okay, thank you. We're going to now hear from Representative Connor Casey, who has 3 bills to present.
So far, might have a few more coming your way.
We
I
know,
really like this committee, so. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's good to be back. I'm Connor Casey, represent Montpelier here. And I'm one of the co-chairs of the Working Vermonters Caucus. Your ranking member, of course, would be another one, and Troy Hedrick from Burlington. So often, I think it just warrants an explainer. A lot of the labor unions, other worker groups will come to us at the beginning of the session if there's an issue and ask us to introduce bills on their behalf. So these would be 3 such. Would you like me to just go into it there, Chair?
take it away.
And I hope you have as few questions as you did.
We
for
start,
Mark
we're
Hoffman.
going just in numerical order, 548, 551, and 570.
Okay, let me begin by asking, do folks generally know what a mediator does in terms of collective bargaining? That's not something we need to refresh on? Okay, great. So H 548 would create a state labor mediator, which would be housed in this version of it at the Vermont Labor Relations Board. And what this role would do is offer free, neutral mediation when labor negotiations hit an impasse, right? This would apply to public and private sector labor disputes and, small unions, small employers, large unions and employers as well there. So Vermont, until pretty recently, had a federal mediator, right? This was a service that was provided, but with some of the cuts on the federal level that we've seen, this service has disappeared. And that puts us in a pretty bad quandary in Vermont here. Because when negotiations stall, parties are often left with litigation, strikes, lockouts, or very expensive stalemates. We've had a few over the last few years that you've heard about right in this committee here. But a mediator is usually going to be the one who's condescending, but like the adult in the room who would come in the last 5 or 10% of the negotiation process before impasse or even after impasse. Meet with parties individually, right? Bring them together, do certain proposals, and just try to get this thing done, right? And this benefits both labor and I think if you take testimony on it, you'll hear employers come in and say this was a valuable service for them. Because mediation is cheaper than lawsuits. And right now, if you want to use the service of a mediator, you can have very small towns needing to foot the bill with the unions. And this can be thousands of dollars a day if you hire a private mediator. So that alone could take a toll on some of our local budgets or small employers. And I think it's something that we could really address here and do it the Vermont way. To avoid things like, strikes, which are bad for workers, they're bad for the public. So a neutral third party helps cool both parties down, solve some of the problems there. It doesn't force agreements, it doesn't weaken collective bargaining, and it doesn't take sides. It's a completely neutral position. So what this bill does would say basically at the state level, we're doing this now. And I'm trying to get some data for you if you're interested. It's not like a ton of cases, like it could be between 10 and 20 a year. But think about nurses on strikes, school districts on strikes, This is way more costly than it would be to actually address this at the state level. Now, is the labor board the best place for it? They're already so thin. I didn't know where else to put it, to be honest. But one thing I would not want to do with this bill is take resources away from the labor board.
Does it have an appropriation attached?
It doesn't. No, it doesn't. I assume if you like it, you'd be sending it downstairs.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Yeah, please.
What do you envision the FTE would be for this position?
With the pay scale,
One FTE,
Yeah, I mean, if it's
probably a full-time FTE.
with 20 cases a year. Right, I mean,
Yeah, it could be 7, could be 40, right? It just depends. And of course, some of these linger, right? As we know.
Just out of curiosity, have you considered having like a sort of a fund that to contract out as cases may arise?
Could be something to talk about. I'll be honest with you, I'm just bringing the issue because it's something we need to address, and I think we need to solve something. It's, yeah.
When did we lose the federal mediator?
You know, JP, was that?
JP Isabel, my AFL-CIO, executive director. That was part of the initial cuts the Trump administration made.
It wasn't, was
it
it
was
Trump
prior.
one?
No, this,
it
yeah.
was-
Yeah, so we just lost the federal.
We just lost it. Yeah, I'm not sure what month or anything, but
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So yeah, really welcome the conversation to, I'd be happy to
Do you-
be somebody who starts brainstorming this, because again, I want to emphasize, this is for labor and management.
Yeah,
And
sure.
both sides would agree. Yeah.
No, is the VLRB, have you talked to them about it?
No.
Okay, they have yet, all right, so we would, if we took it off the wall, we'd take testimony, great.
And I believe there is a Senate companion bill as well for this. Yeah, by Senator Rom Hinsdale, I believe. And my thoughts were similar to Rep. Dodge about perhaps a contract mediator. And your bill and presentation just spurred something that I would like to flag for the committee that we haven't heard. We've heard a lot about the federal impacts on housing, but I'd like to also hear at some point some of the federal impacts on labor. And so perhaps JP or others, but I don't even know.
That's an interesting, yeah.
I don't even know them. And so I know there are. So I would like, thank you. So I would like to at least hear that sometime.
You should bring that up when we meet.
Okay.
So this is different, is it not, than, for example, a number of our processes involve a special master who has to be retained. That's not the same. This is a mediator who's an in-house mediator and is available to the parties on a voluntary basis, right?
You're exactly right. Yep.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Any other questions before he proceeds to 551? All right.
I'll be quick, or Chair Emmons will have my hide.
I would like to hang out. I want to hang out here because it's safer. No comment. Welcome
It's
to.
a hard moment. Yeah. I love it. Okay, H551, overtime pay for firefighters. Let's give you a snapshot of how that works now. Firefighters are exempt from normal overtime rules because under federal law, they can work up to 53 hours a week and get zero overtime. That's legal.
50, how many?
53. It's legal, but it's outdated. So what this bill would do is overtime would start at 42 hours. And once you hit that trigger, it's time and a half. And what that does is it recognizes that firefighters don't work like normal schedules here. So it narrows the exemption, but it doesn't eliminate it. And why 42 hours? ESPN, Vice Chair.
I think it's ESP. ESPN is for
Teen girls.
baseball.
Okay. Firefighters don't work 9 to 5 jobs there, so 42 hours reflects more their real world schedules, and that varies a little bit from firehouse to firehouse. I'm sure you'll hear that, but it avoids triggering overtime.
Yeah, go on.
It avoids triggering that overtime every week, right? So it prevents municipalities from pushing people into like the 53 free hours there, in the 1 week there. So it's a middle ground, but I don't think it's extreme. So why would this matter? Obviously, like the human toll of this, the long hours that firefighters work and the real burnout that we're seeing there. I was talking to Chris, who's here from the firefighters union. I've done the overnights at the firehouse there, and I've spoken to some of the folks in town, and it's tough, when you're asleep at night and you're just waiting. You can't have a pint after work sometimes, right? You might be called in. It's just like the everyday life is, we push people to extremes. So it helps experienced firefighters stay on the job, and it's really going to help because I think you're seeing it in all your communities. We're definitely seeing it here. Firefighters are struggling with recruitment and retention. It's a tough gig. So what does this bill not do? It doesn't affect volunteers, doesn't mandate 40-hour overtime, does not override any union contracts, right? And that's important. So right now, again, just to sum up, firefighters can work up to 43 hours with no overtime. This bill says in Vermont, overtime should start at 42 before the exhaustion sets in.
It's set, current law is 53 hours.
53, yeah, sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
I'm curious, well, first off, I would do anything for the firefighters. They are truly our greatest heroes. And so I would support this bill. I'm curious, are there other professions, like I think about nursing and others who work similar type of, do you know of any other similarities to this bill that
Any other like exemptions at the
Yeah.
federal level that get you up to that?
Just-
I think there are, right? But yeah.
So Chris Doobie, President of Professional Firefighters. Just to answer, I personally, I don't know that.
Okay.
Firefighters have been specifically exempted.
Hmm.
The nurses, most of them work 3 12-hour
That's
shifts
true.
or whatever.
right.
They get overtime over 40, police get overtime
Mm.
over 40. But the Fair Labor Standards specifically carved out firefighters, so. And I can happy research that.
Oh, no, you're,
find
yeah,
Why they were carved out.
Right.
So,
interesting. Yeah, well, sounds like we'd like to fix that.
I agree with
Yes, go ahead, please.
Are all, I think I asked this before, but I don't recall. Are all firefighters in Vermont employees or are there still volunteer
Still
firefighters?
volunteers, actually quite a few.
So how would, where does, is there a number of how many firefighters are paid versus volunteer? Like, is there data anywhere about that?
I thought it was like about 13 sort of full-time,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's roughly right around, because I represent 13 IFFs, and there's 1 or 2 that are non-IFFs. I think about 300 full-time employees for firefighters, for firefighting. Around the numbers, they don't have an accurate number on the volunteer side, in the range of 3,000, give or take. I mean, it's such a fluid group to get the exact numbers. But they're guessing approximately, fire academy guesses approximately 3,000
3,000
volunteers,
volunteers and 300 full-time.
full-time, correct.
Stipend?
It varies from municipality to municipality. Some get paid per call, some get paid minimal per hour, and some are truly 100% volunteer. So,
Yes, Ashley.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, so Fairfax, for example, has 1 or 2 like full-time paid firefighters, and then supplements the rest with volunteers. And that could be, you know, they come from Cambridge, Jericho, St. Albans, Georgia. So, and a lot of other municipalities are very much like that, so.
Any further questions on 551? Yes.
How's this gonna be affected by your next bill you're gonna talk to us?
so you're saying you want to pass them all?
I think we'll need to talk.
Well, great lead into my next bill, H570. This is a daily overtime pay, and this is a conversation starter, right? And several unions have spoken about the need just to have this conversation, and we'll talk about how it works now. Overtime is based almost entirely on weekly schedules, so like 40 hours a week, right? But, you know, someone can work a 12 to 14-hour day. I'd say many of us at the table have had jobs where we worked, you know, double shifts, like equaling that, and get no extra pay if they stay under the 40 hours a week. So, you know, you're working a couple 12-hour days in a row. That's pretty rough. Overtime, what this bill does is overtime sets in after 8 hours a day, a time and a half. And then it would trigger double time once you hit the 12 hours in a day. So it still keeps like the weekly rules in place there, but it focuses on the long days, not just the weeks. And that's kind of the genesis of this bill. We need to talk about those long days, right? That people are working. And I think they're doing it more than ever. Why does it matter? It's fatigue, it's injuries, it's burnout. And it discourages employers from relying on extreme shifts. It encourages smarter scheduling and safer workplaces. If you look at where the statute refers you after the bill, but it's not in the bill itself, there's a million exemptions in this, right? So that's really why it's a conversation starter. Because if you're blocking out like retail workers, if you're blocking out some of I bet these guys are in it as well, of course, right? You're talking a pretty limited group, but I think the conversation to be had in the committee process is who it should apply to, right? Because I think like, hopefully we can all agree that it's not ideal to have somebody working 14 hours a day. I'm useless after 8, to be honest. It's
So are you saying that there's in existing statute to the section this bill would amend, there are many exceptions?
my bill doesn't tell the whole story. There's a ton of exemptions. Yeah.
But there needs to be a conversation about exemptions. Yes, Ann.
Currently, current law is that an employer can choose to pay overtime after 8 hours, correct?
Sure. Yep. And then obviously some unions would have contracts that would specify what the overtime is, right?
Okay. What about the employees who say want to work 4 10-hour days because they want 3 days on the weekend? I mean, I can tell you as someone who's my entire career has been in HR, I've had many employees come to me saying, I want longer weekends.
It could be a great arrangement. I agree with you. I'd actually prefer it most of the time myself, but I think that can be something that you specify in the bill. Certainly, like I've had a couple employees since I introduced the bill say, I love my 4 10 hours a day there, and we don't want to take that away from people especially if it's like negotiated with the employer there. But I would hope it would be a voluntary thing rather than mandating that.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just have one last question. How did you come up with double after 12?
Looking at that, California was the one that just spearheaded this, so that was the legislation, I believe.
Has it been passed in any?
Yeah, California.
Just California?
I think just California at the moment. Though.
Okay.
What's the relationship between the bill's idea and contracts, people's employment, what they've negotiated?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's superseding a contract, but like, employees.
You have a labor contract.
Employees routinely like trade away benefits in this. This would set the floor for it as you go into
Right,
negotiations.
and then they could have a contract that
Sure enough.
provides otherwise. Right.
Sure enough.
Yeah. Questions? All right.
All right.
Thank you.
It's always a pure pleasure.
No, wait, that's it, right.
I think that's me, yeah. But I'm just down the hall. Give it knock anytime, folks.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
And,
I know.
We
Travis
have,
now left.
we have one more. Are you gonna let Teresa know what you're gonna do?
No, it's Travis.
Oh,
She's extra.
mine's out of.
It's tomorrow. It's. You going over 607.
575.
No, 607.
It wasn't printed.
Don't look at
this
that. 607, which is the private
Oh,
equity
Emily,
in housing,
okay.
but she just stepped out.
For the members of the public, we're taking a little break while we wait for the sponsor of the bill, who also happens to be ranking member of the committee, to appear.
In case anybody's wondering,
I am.
there is exactly 1 month until pitchers and catchers. Sharon.
Take another look.
Is she? Where?
Until.
Why don't we, let's go offline until we find her.
I think you can do it from this. Believe button.
Oh,
We'll come back when we have some.
Okay.
Are we off?
No.
It's the green one, you think?
No. Oh, she's coming?
yeah, that's, you just.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, minutes.
You gotta sit in the chair.
I'm getting my notes.
Okay.
I didn't think of it. Hello?
Well. Representative
Carl.
Graza, H607.
Hello, committee. I think Miriam was going to look for me, but hello. So yes, Rep. Emily Krasnow. And I'm here today to introduce H607, a bill grounded in a simple but urgent principle. Homes should first and foremost be homes, not financial instruments. Across Vermont, families are doing everything right. They are working, saving, and trying to put down roots in the communities they love. We do not want folks being outbid, not by neighbors, but by large, well-capitalized institutional investors who can move faster, pay more, and absorb losses in ways no individual household can. We have a housing market that feels increasingly out of reach and increasingly detached from the people who live and work here. H607 is a targeted, balanced tool to add to the work we are doing around housing. This bill does not ban institutional investment. It does not interfere with nonprofit housing providers, community land trusts, or public housing efforts. And it does not penalize small landlords or Vermonters who own a few rental properties. Instead, it draws a clear and responsible line around large institutional real estate investors, entities with substantial assets pooled, investor capital, and ownership of multiple single and two-family homes. First, the bill establishes a 90-day waiting period before these large institutional actors may purchase single or two-family homes. This ensures that ordinary buyers, first-time homeowners, working families, and local residents have a genuine opportunity to compete in the marketplace before large-scale investors step in. Importantly, this applies only after a home has been listed publicly, preserving transparency and fairness in the process. Second, H607 addresses.
And I gotta ask you a question.
Of course, Chair.
So. Because I've read the bill, but I've forgotten this, is the. So an institutional investor has to wait 90 days from public offering for sale.
Right.
So if they're, in other words, they can't just make a deal without a sale with the individual's property owner.
Cameron is not here to answer, so I want to make sure that I have an accurate.
But that would be probably your intention, right? That they have to, in other words, if you're going to presume transparency, you'd have, the idea would be you have to wait 90 days from a public offering.
Right, because the intent is to let people, not corporations, have the first stab at the listing.
Okay,
So does this preclude a landowner selling directly to an?
Yeah.
Because they have, I mean, they advertise all over the place, all we're buying.
Yeah.
So does this require that the property be listed publicly? Because there's the quick workaround is we just, we'll advertise on every diner placement in the state and they'll call us, we'll buy it and it'll never be on the market.
Sure, and there are a few other, as we continue to discuss this bill, there are a few other loopholes that I have since thought about that are flagged in my eyes and there are not guardrails for. So if we decide to take up this bill, I have some things that I would like to discuss, and it sounds like others would like to discuss as well as flags for that. Yes, I believe Vice Chair had a question.
did you have a question?
Oh,
It was.
got it.
Perfectly.
Yes, okay. So we are on, okay. Second, H607 addresses a quieter but equally consequential issue, tax policy. Under current law, institutional investors often receive generous depreciation and interest deductions for homes that are functionally removed from the owner-occupied market. These tax advantages can make it more profitable to hold homes as long-term rental assets than to sell them to families who want to live in them. This bill corrects that imbalance by eliminating depreciation and interest deductions for covered properties owned by institutional investors, while still preserving exemptions when homes are sold to owner occupants or nonprofit affordable housing organizations. In other words, we are aligning our tax codes with our housing values. Vermont is not alone in grappling this challenge. Across the country, states alike, our legislators are recognizing that unchecked institutional consolidation of single-family housing undermines affordability, community stability, and long-term economic resilience. States and cities are exploring waiting periods, rights of first refusal policies, tax reforms, and enhanced reporting requirements to ensure housing markets serve people first. H607 places Vermont squarely within this growing national effort, while tailoring the solution to our state's scale, values, and legal framework. At its core, this bill is about fairness. It's about ensuring that Vermont's housing supply is not quietly drained away by financial strategies that were never designed with communities in mind. I look forward to working with the committee to examine the impacts of institutional ownership in our housing market and to refine this proposal with shared goal of keeping Vermont's communities livable, stable, and accessible for the people who call them home. And I also, one question I may receive that I will preemptively, we are not the first state to do this, and I did not reinvent the wheel. This legislation is completely modeled after New York's law that is a law, it passed. It has not been in effect for many years, but it is not a new concept. There's also multiple legislation that has been introduced in Congress around this topic and has a very broad coalition of support from President Donald Trump to Senator Bernie Sanders. And a very broad coalition of people who want to put people over profit in this arena. Yes.
I think it's fascinating, and I appreciate you bringing this to the committee because we've been sitting in this committee, and I don't think we've really had the opportunity to talk about private equity and how it affects our housing market. That said, do we have any data on what that looks like? And maybe I've just missed it in testimony or.
Excellent question. And that was when I first, 2 years ago, when I actually have had this bill in the works for a couple years, but pulled it last year because we were busy. We still are busy, but it seemed like if I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna roll with it. So I went with it this year. But that was my first question as I started digging into it. I know that we have lots of national data and I'm happy to present that, but no, it hasn't come up in committee. And I think a lot of us have those questions. So after I started to meet with data analysts from Vermont to talk about it, and unfortunately, like many housing things that we have here, we don't have the refined data of how many of the people of the entities that are defined under this bill that we have in Vermont. But like many of the bills I introduced, they are preemptive so that we don't become, and as we continue to build housing, which I personally would want to do, I would love a lot more housing that we need. I want to make sure that Vermont doesn't become a target for this kind of investment that we've seen across the country. So while other states may have more refined data of these types of entities, Vermont doesn't have. However, I will, if we take up the bill, I will be able, it won't be me, but I have people who can work for data organizations in Vermont who can present data that isn't as finely tuned for this exact entity, but they can kind of suss out some of it. And then I also have some folks who can testify from different towns or cities and municipalities who have done some of their own research and data on this. So we may be able to kind of put together some things from that, but we won't be able to have a refined data on this exact amount. But it is something that's important because I believe in data-driven policy. So that was one of the first things that I wanted to see. So anecdotes are fine and we'll have plenty if we take testimony. But we're gonna have to work together to really figure that out, but it's also about prevention. And similar to other bills I've introduced, like the animal cruelty one across the hall, it's also about preventing this from being a target.
I have heard anecdotal evidence that in certain places in Vermont, this is a real problem. People come up to me and say, God, in our town, we have all these vacant homes that are owned by some company that's just letting them stand vacant for the moment. But one of the things, just for the committee, we have had conversations with Chair Marcotte of the House Economic Development Committee about whether we should hold joint hearing on this. It's a bill that cuts across a number of issues, including taxation, as Emily mentioned. Emily who was ledge counsel on this?
Well, we have two.
Who?
It's Cameron.
And John?
Nope, it's Cameron and Kirby. And yeah, so Cameron did the portions of the waiting period and the overall policy pieces, and then Kirby did the taxation. And again, I do not like to reinvent the wheel with bills I introduce, so it's very much exactly modeled after another state. And multiple states, as we speak, are also considering similar legislation. So if we take up the bill, we can look at different approaches and, you know, refine it to people's liking if that's to their choosing. But I really wanted to just introduce this conversation. And as Rob Bartley mentioned, the conversations about private equity haven't really been talked about a lot in the building, and they're across a lot of different sectors. Whether in our all-member briefing, we've heard about healthcare. My veterinarian is recently purchased by a private equity company. So I really wanted to start the conversation in the building about private equity and what that means for Vermont and the state. So that was another reason I introduced the bill. And because housing is where I reside and where I had heard the most from constituents or other people about issues that they're encountering. Another place that I wanted to flag that it's happening in is in manufactured housing and mobile home communities. That was flagged for some folks that I met with at the data folks for the Vermont Housing Finance Agency, as well as across the country. There's a lot of articles and videos about how they're being targeted and bought up their whole communities by these private investors, and then they're jacking up the rents and becoming a monopoly so that people can't own them.
Go ahead, Gail.
So because there is a statute that when the park is going up for sale, that the homeowners have the right, what is it called?
Right of first refusal.
Right. However, when they're too small is when the problem is. When there's not somebody who will finance and then they don't get to the table, then it's the developers, the speculative developers that scoop it up.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a problem that has been happening now across the country with the Great Rise. So again, if we decide to take up this bill, I have people who can show the data and statistics as best we have in those cases.
Any further questions from members of the committee? I think this is an interesting area myself. And the fact that we don't have data. When I look at short-term rentals, for example, there's a lot of concern about short-term rentals, but the fact is we're kind of several years too late in the sense that to the extent we wanted to do more than we've done, the explosive growth in short-term rentals is pretty much over. The market's, if anything, softening a little. And so it's kind of leveled off. But so the fact that, I mean, I don't know how big a problem this is in Vermont. And if we take testimony, I guess we're going to find out a little more. But I'd hate to wait until it is a big problem when it's too late and determine that we wanted to do something.
That's my concern, is I'd rather be proactive in protecting Vermont for Vermonters and making sure that Wall Street isn't targeting us like they are in other states, and that we remain open to folks having the first shot at housing and building that equity in their lives and not corporations.
So we will continue discussions with, if we decide to take this off the wall, we will continue discussions with the Commerce Committee on this Krasnow-Trump bill.
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
I think this happened in St. Johnsbury. It was an apartment building, like 55 and up. Somebody bought it and they kept it for like maybe a year and a half, and then they sold it for $1 million more than what it was worth. And the new homeowners made it for everybody. It wasn't 55 and up any longer. And I know someone who lives there, and the landlords do not take care of the building. She had to I told her, make a complaint to the health inspector. You know, half of her apartment had electricity, the other half did not. And then they had laundry in the basement, and our citizens that like doing drugs would break into the basement and hang out there. So you go down to do your laundry, you have no idea how many needles you're going to come across, because it's like the landlord just didn't care. So, you know, she had to fight for stuff. She got stuff done, but it's not how it should be. That's my comment.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes.
There are gonna be like definitions of like what that means and like who, because I'm just thinking about when we're talking about private, this is all new to me, this language. And when we're talking about corporations, or I don't even know, we've always used language of developers.
Gonna have to define
Right?
it.
Yeah, so I'm like, is there gonna be like some
If anything-
language around like what are corporations,
Oh,
who
yeah.
are corporate? How do you determine what size? Are we talking about Vermont-based companies and things like that? Just because I know just locally in Chittenden and other counties of, some folks who do own quite a bit of property. And so how do you determine what is considered a corporation and how much, and how do you quantify that? Is that in there already, or will that be something we discuss?
So we're not having the walkthrough, but that was another one of I represent South Burlington.
Yeah.
So we, think about the folks that, the LLC landlords, the big companies. And again, I do want to make clear, this isn't this isn't for developers.
Okay,
So they can go nuts.
okay,
This is for single family. This is for like housing.
okay.
And it is very tightly defined and it is very large. We're
If
keeping.
anything, perhaps because it was modeled on New York. it
That's
wasn't
up
too
to
large,
you all, I said this earlier when I introduced a bill across the hall and they were like, oh, we want this, so once I introduce a bill, I feel like it belongs to the committee. And so what you folks, I am also on the committee. So I'm not completely removed from this.
Yes, what do you mean you?
But I said across the hall, if you like things better, I think committees sometimes make bills better.
We
Because
always make.
We always do, of course, but anyways, so as we continue to discuss bills, we will pick apart, we can tailor, we can increase, we can decrease, we can do whatever, is our pleasure after testimony and other things. But yes, it is, a bit, Cameron, if we take up the bill at some point, that is the section that is critically important to this bill, because it is absolutely not the, folks here that are having even big companies here. It's not them. It's very tightly defined, modeled after New York. And like, our chair said, I believe that it is an appropriate comparison, but some might want to see it stricter. I don't know. So we'll kind of discuss that. But this is really a starting point, but yes, there's a whole section on definitions and it's very robust. It's really for those huge corporations, that come in and buy up, from out of state, like Wall Street versus Main
The
Street.
the ones that lost 4% of their stock value right after Trump announced that he thought it was a good idea. Yeah, but,
And I also, if you look at the timestamps of when bills are introduced, mine was before that.
But so it's not.
Sure,
Okay.
it's the,
that works better.
that's better.
But yes, you have to put in bills guide. I've actually put this in 2 years ago because I modeled it after Congress bill.
Right. We will, one of the things, just again, to tell the committee the conversations I've had. I talked to the chair and the vice chair of Commerce. And Emily is working with the vice chair of Commerce to think about when we could hold joint hearings. And part of the problem is there's a lot of people who are going to be interested in this bill. Developers, the finance community, banks, the chamber, certainly probably I don't know that VLCT will have anything to say.
Right, of course, I don't even know what it
But anyway, seriously, I think the Lake Champlain Chamber,
Oh, yeah,
so there's gonna be the Department of Financial
the
Regulation.
administration.
We're gonna have to, I mean, this is not, if we decide to take this up, we have to be willing to devote, some substantial period of time to it. It's not an easy little targeted bill.
And I just really appreciate the discussion and presenting it to all of you, and regardless of what happens, I think it's something that I hear about from constituents. And other legislators have come and talked about it, like hearing from constituents those concerns. It's not like a pie in the sky situation.
Right. Okay, any further questions?
Back to my seat.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Gail.
At this point, we are finished with our direct testimony for the day.
Oh.
Floor is not until 3. Our agenda just shows committee discussion. The only thing I want to say is a couple of things. One is about tomorrow. We kind of are resuming briefly our general discussion, and what we decided to do was to bring in the Mike DeRochers, who's the Director of Fire Safety, to talk about how they address safety building permit issues in Vermont. I mean, what their relevance, how that applies here. Vermont is a little unusual in that it has no statewide building permit that applies to single family homes. There is no statewide enforcement of the energy codes, which you've heard testimony about. There is statewide enforcement of multifamily residential and commercial, which Mike does. And so this will be a chance for us to hear from him about that. And we have someone from the League of Cities who we know well, who has been with us before, to join him. Then, remember, we brought up the problem that I mentioned to you having to do with Section 8 housing. This is not part of our initial set of bills. This is kind of an urgent situation that has developed. And it is the slow, not so slow, but relatively slow, continuous decline in the number of Section 8 vouchers that we have. These vouchers are the ones that make up the difference between what an individual can afford and what the market is. And we've been in this slow decline. It's this sort of downward spiral. And what we have is a proposal which is going before the Appropriations Committee to have a one-time appropriation through the Budget Adjustment Act, and there's extra money we could use to do that. And the purpose of the appropriation is not to sort of just throw at this program. It's a one-time appropriation designed to make sure that this is always done by calendar year, that next calendar year, when HUD sits down to decide what is Vermont's share of the pie going to be, whatever the size of the pie, it increases our share. It's a one-time technical injection of cash to make sure that our share of future appropriations is as big as it can be. There were a number of questions that were asked by you guys when we brought this up. Joe asked questions about what would happen if the money wasn't used, or would it be used? And so, and at the request, because of that, and at the request of the Appropriations Committee, we are going to take testimony on the subject. And the first witness will be Kathleen Burke again, who contested. Kathleen knows this whole program inside and out. But also, we're going to have two members of municipal housing authorities. We're going to have Joe Troiano, who's the executive director of the Montpelier Housing Authority, and Kevin Loso, who's the executive director of the Rutland Housing Authority, come and testify. This briefly, I've urged them to be briefed, just address this specific issue. What I will do is I will bring to the committee a letter to the Appropriations Committee. Remember, we do a letter on the budget. This will just be on the BAA, which says, as I will draft it, that we support this. And then the committee can debate and decide whether it wants me to send that letter or not. So that's what's happening tomorrow. Our first hearing is at 9 a.m. sharp. Please, everyone, try to be here. We had trouble today getting quorum, and we need the quorum. And in fact, it's better if everybody's here. The other thing I just want to repeat is that the three of us are getting together and going over every bill that's on the wall and attempt to produce for you a recommendation as to what we're going to take off the wall and what we're going to hear, and sort of an order. Some of the bills on the wall, like for example, my bill, one I introduced, which had to do with correcting and just a technical correction of labor law, probably I don't think we would take testimony. We'd probably we'll take testimony, but it would be our counsel. It's easy. Others of them, like Emily's bill, for example, are very consuming. And we'll just have to, so we're going to produce a preliminary recommendation. It has to be preliminary because there's still bills coming in. And we can't, there's any number of bills coming in, but it's sort of, we need enough so that we can start having hearings. We don't have to plot out our entire next, 3 months or whatever. But we do need to sort of have enough to get started. So that's all I have today. Is there any discussion or any other member who wants to chat? Yes.
So what's your time frame for that, and when are
we
you
have
having the
that?
discussions?
Probably Wednesday. We're meeting Tuesday.
A week from today?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're meeting Tuesday. We didn't want to do it right away because we still have bills coming in. And in fact, a number of the bills, what might be larger bills, aren't in yet. So we also are going to hear, as many of you may know, the administration has put in a bill. That is a bill it's a combination of land use through Act 250 and housing. It's very much like, it's not like, but it's a much shorter version. But do you remember last year?
There's really nothing new in the administration's
Right.
bill.
But
There should be no shock.
yeah, there's no shocks. But last year, do you remember the administration developed kind of like an 80-some page thing? And it wasn't referred to this committee. It was referred to the Environment Committee. So it wasn't on our wall.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, enough of it had to do with housing that we asked them to come in and talk about it. And we're going to do that with this as well. We'll have the author, if she wants to come in and present it, and we'll ask Alex Farrell to come in and talk about it. It's not on our wall. We're not hearing it, but I figured we should at least know what's in it.
I agree.
And so next week, after we meet, we'll be back to you with an idea of what do we start with? You know, what are the first things, and everybody can react.
And I was gonna say too, since there's a slow trickle as usual, if there are bills that folks in the committee have coming that, you know, folks might not know about, they could give a heads up, right? Like, I don't know what the
Yeah.
timeline is for the trickle. But like, you know, if there's things that you might want to like be like, oh, this is coming and maybe I can introduce it and talk to the committee, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'll give you an example in my case.
Oh, yeah.
I've been working on a kind of large landlord tenant bill, which I believe today will finally be in quasi bill form, but hasn't been introduced yet. And it might not be introduced until next week or the week after, but I know it's there and I'll put it down. If you guys, any of you has a bill that you think this is clearly coming to housing, tell us about it and we'll put it on the list for next week. Even if it hasn't been introduced yet,
Yeah.
at least we'll know it's kind of out there.
That's what I was saying, because it's
Yeah.
a trickle.
Yeah. I mean, we have Tom and I,
Right.
and I guess you guys are on a rural finance bill, which is, you know, rural housing finance. That hasn't been introduced. It will be soon, but it hasn't been. Those are big bills. And similarly, anything you've got, we need to know.
Mhm.
Mark,
Yes,
I sent you.
you have a bill.
I have
Debbie has-
two. I have two. One has to do with squatting,
Yes,
mainly
Is that-
because somebody asked for it. So I said, sure. And also looking at the eviction process for non-payment of rent and lease violation.
right. Now, the non-pay, has either of those bills been introduced or are they still in drafting?
They're not in drafting. They've been brought to the next level. Waiting to be assigned, I guess, is.
So yeah, any day now.
Yeah, I've seen the text of your bills. I just haven't seen a printed version yet. We know about those.
Okay,
So just let us know. We're meeting Tuesday afternoon and we'll go through everything and then come back to you guys probably on Wednesday. Anything else that people would like to bring up? This is our time. You do.
Oh, I guess I did already, but I'm gonna bring it up again, that I would like an update if we have time at some point to hear from someone on some of the federal impacts on labor.
Labor. Okay,
At least I can find someone in the labor, but I'm curious, right?
right.
I don't know. Break.
Anything else, guys?
Great.
Hearing no one, let's adjourn until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.